now I'm live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 25. And today I will be talking a little bit about a topic that probably at some point I'll present a little bit more of like a finalized set of thoughts about. It's very much in progress right now. Here I am. I'm in the middle of working on this. The code is underway. But basically, the question I'm looking at is how many oniomi readings are possible for kanji? And if you don't know, when we talk about different ways to read kanji, the major distinction is between native and Chinese readings, right? Because these are characters taken from Chinese. Often they're read in a Japanese pronunciation of the Chinese word, or sometimes they're just read as a native Japanese word with the same meaning. And the thing about characters being read according to their Chinese pronunciation is that in Chinese, characters are always read as being a single syllable. Specifically, Japanese derives its Chinese readings of kanji from.
Your Honor.
Oh, what's up, Sean?
Hey.
Sorry.
Hello.
Oh, what's up, guys? Sorry, let me plow on with my topic, but you can ask questions or say anything you want at the end, if that's cool.
Okay.
So, I was just saying, Chinese readings of characters in Japanese are all taken roughly from the Middle Chinese period, which I don't think is a very precise label, but like roughly first millennium AD. So maybe more something like between 600 to 1200 ish is when most readings are taken. And so in Middle Chinese, like in modern Chinese languages, characters are always read as a single syllable. And what that means is that the set of possible pronunciations of these characters, even in Japanese, is pretty constrained. They're not always one syllable in Japanese, but it's like a small and somewhat easily definable subset of possibilities. And in fact, looking at the number of possible readings of characters is something I remember doing when I was learning Mandarin. In Mandarin, if you ignore tone, which it's probably unwise to do, but throwing out tone, there are about 400 possible readings of characters. The reason that it's not necessarily wise to throw out tone is because there are plenty of pronunciations that only occur in a particular tone. So tone isn't just randomly scattered across other features of pronunciation, but Japanese, obviously, it throws out tone. So, leaving that aside, Mandarin is about 400. I'll get into what I have so far and the number I came up with, and then I'll kind of compare that more specifically to modern Chinese varieties. Yeah,
Dude,
so.
dude, dude.
Oh, yeah, what?
One thing. Don't want to like spoil your Japanese of
The game,
reading.
I know, yeah.
But,
I
but,
can't do
but
it right now.
would you want to do it another day? Like maybe Saturday? Because I do have to go to bed kind of early.
Uh, Whatever. I'll just talk to you when I'm done here, and we can figure it out.
Okay.
Okay. Anyway, so I've got these two. Right. So I've got this spreadsheet here where I've tried to represent everything I have found so far. And I've split it into two different sheets here because, basically Chinese readings of Japanese characters are split according to time period when they were loaned, and by far the two most major groups of readings are the so-called Goon, which was like 600s ish, I think, and the Kangon, which is, I don't know, a couple centuries later. I don't know exactly when. And what you see, I mean, this is something that I that is well known and that I've actually had listed as a topic for a while that I wanted to get to. And I won't really get into the specifics here, but just the pattern of differences between Goon and Kangon. Because in the same way that there have been a lot of times where I can remember the Mandarin pronunciation of a character and kind of use a certain rule set to guess at how it might be pronounced in Japanese. A lot of times you can do that to kind of guess at, if you know one, you can guess at the other between Goon and Kangon, because there are certain rules for how they tend to be related to each other, or how they can be related to each other. Because they're usually similar, right? They're just taken from slightly different periods of Middle Chinese, so the pronunciation differences are usually pretty slight. But anyway, so the way I've split it out here, basically the primary split I've done here is between, I guess what I'll call like initials or onsets, which is just the first consonant or consonants, if there is some other consonant followed by a Y. So I split between that and what I'll call the final, which is everything else, including the second syllable, if there is one. As for what the possible, so I already talked about kind of what the consonants are in Japanese and how consonants can be combined with an extra Y, so you get combinations like kia, ria, sha, etc. As for what constitutes the possible finals, there are obviously, I've got this written down actually, there are obviously the 5 single vowels, and I'll move this over a little here. So the 5 single vowels, a, e, o, and u, and each of those could be followed by the nasal n, or one of the 4 additional syllables, ki, ku, chi, or tsu, which are basically the Japanese attempt to pronounce the t or the k sound that could come at the end of Middle Chinese syllables. With all that, that's like for each of the 5 vowels, you have those plus 5 possible things you could add on to the end. So that gives you 30 possible finals. And then there are 5 double vowel finals that we see in onyomi, which are ai, ui, u, e, and o. And I've just kind of sorted those in with the vowels that they correspond to here. So I've got I, U, O, and A down here. So that's the layout of this chart. And it's color-coded with a few things. I've used, obviously, just gray rows to break up the vowels here, but I've also used gray to mark off things which are not possible for any Japanese word, not just Chinese readings, but they would never be possible for any Japanese word. So that includes the fact that the W sound, the W sound, can only be before the A vowel sound and no other vowel. The fact that like the Y sound, ya, or any consonant combination with that sound, sh, j, ch, ria, kya, gya, whatever, none of those can be before the E or S sounds, right? So those can only be before A, U, or O. And so that's why this whole gray region is closed off here. And then the last sections that are gray, this is something that's a little more subtle. But, so the D sound and the Z sound, right, the D sound and the Z sound, are not distinguished before the vowels U or E, right? This is something that I've mentioned. Or, in fact, they're not distinguished if there's a following ya. So, like, maybe I'll write out in kana for those who will understand it, just to illustrate what I mean. I wish there was a big place for me to write this. Anyway, for those who know, how kana works, you could imagine you write. Actually, I'll pull up a kana table. So in the D row basically and the 0, right? In the I column, you have two possible kana, both of which would be pronounced chi. Two possible kana, both of which would be pronounced zu, and then these kana combinations that are pronounced ja, ju, and jo. And there are two ways to write each of these, because these are all the environments in which the d sound and the z sound merge into a j sound, or I guess a z sound before you. But the fact is that when representing kanji readings in hiragana, these are always spelled only using things from the 0. So that's why there's only one J column here, even though theoretically there are two ways to write the J sound in kana. And same thing with with basically the zu syllable, or the zu sound, is that when representing onyomi in kana, they're only ever written with a Z. So anything in this kind of DU set of cells is never going to occur. So that's kind of what the gray areas are. The other thing I want to say is, obviously some of these combinations don't really occur. You don't have like T, you don't have tu. These are chi and su in actual Japanese pronunciation. But in the same manner as kana tables, these are just kind of meant to be systematic. So some of these extra sound changes, like fu instead of hu, right? Those are just given, those are assumed to be automatic here. And so that's why, for instance, I actually have like shi, chi, and ji grayed out here. Even though those are sounds that occur in Japanese, they're just represented by these cells, not by these cells. Anyway, so given all that, the total number of possibilities might be everything that's not gray here, which I'm not sure what that number is, because there are a few more things that I'm going to exclude. One is that for whatever reason, readings ending in ki are pretty rare. In fact, in go-on, readings can never end in aki, uki, oki, or eki. In kangon, readings can never end in aki, uki, oki, or iki. They can end in eki. So for my counting, I'm going to exclude aki, uki, and oki as not possible readings. But I'll say iki and eki, they are both possible, though each is restricted to a certain time period. So that's why certain things are red here. Lastly, there are certain areas I've marked off here in yellow. These are areas that don't occur in either kangon or goon, and I suspect, so you can see these yellow, the regions that I've marked in yellow here, they're all either yellow or red in kangon. So these are regions that I hypothesize, I'm going to say they're probably not possible, depending on what your definition of possible is. I'll say, right, some of these might be missing as a matter of coincidence, but I'm going to say it's not possible that there would have been any Middle Chinese syllable for which you could have gotten a Japanese reading jatsu or gyutsu or anything in these yellow cells. Now, the white cells are really the kind of the most questionable area here. I guess I didn't specifically say, but the green cells are hopefully fairly obviously readings that I did find. And they're marked with the number of characters I found that were read that way out of a pool of 2,500. The pool of characters that I used was those which were either in the Clozemaster course or in the list of Joyo kanji published by the Japanese government, or both. So that's 2,501 kanji to be specific. And among that set, I've marked down how many have a particular reading. So for instance, there are, I guess, 45 kanji with the reading ko. And so you can see a lot of these readings, I only have a few, maybe even just one kanji that are pronounced that way. So there's only one kanji with a Goen reading cha, right? There's only two with the reading kichi. Like, some of these are pretty rare, which brings us into a data sparsity situation, right? Like, is it really, should we think of it as impossible for a onyomi reading to be kiki, or ratsu, or juchi? I mean, there are no characters with these readings, but should we call them impossible, or should we just say, hey, there's only so many characters, coincidentally, they didn't happen. And that's kind of a matter of interpretation. It's just a matter of what you think the word possible should mean in this context. So the number that I put in the thumbnail of this video is what I would consider to be a reasonable definition of the maximum possible. The way that I calculated that was I excluded these rows aki, uki, and oki, but I included everything else which is not gray. So that gives us basically 6 finals starting in A times 24 columns in that section, plus there are 13 finals starting with U or O, with 23 columns for each of those, 23 onsets basically for each of those finals. And then there are 13 for that start with either E or A, and each of those has 12 possible onsets. And that gives you 599. So that's kind of like what I would call a reasonable absolute ceiling on how many are possible under your definition of possible. If you want to exclude the yellow areas, I don't know exactly what that brings you down to, but that looks like it's, I don't know, another 50 to 100 fewer. A lot of these white spaces, I mean, it's debatable. I don't consider this finished. I'm going to look more into like the phonology of Middle Chinese and look at more at the correspondences between readings and try to get a sense of why some of these gaps might be here. But yeah, you know, it's never really possible to say, even in Chinese, modern Chinese languages, it's never really possible to say how many syllables are possible in those. One thing that I would like to do, but I haven't done, is, you know, there's the notion of like common use kanji. There's something like maybe, you know, the Joyo list is about 2,000. There's something maybe like 3,000 kanji that are understood, I think, by most people in Japan. But the actual number of kanji is in the tens of thousands. It's much, much greater. And so what could be interesting is just to try to find an even larger list of kanji and then try like absolutely every kanji that I can find and try to fill out the spaces in this chart a little bit. And see, you know, if maybe I start to hit on what seem like hard borders, right? If I look at 40,000 characters, will I still not see anything in these yellow regions that I've marked off? Or, you know, like, who knows? What will I come up with? There's all kinds of unresolved questions. For instance, this one's really interesting to me. So in Kangon, the consonants na and ma almost never appear. They are only used in the syllables no, ne, mo, and me. And that seems so oddly specific. I have to wonder if that's just a coincidence, just a data sparsity thing, and if maybe I would find more filled in with these other finals, maybe if I looked at a broader subset. It's like, who knows, you know? Data sparsity is always the kind of thing where even if I look at more and more kanji, maybe I'll fill in more and more of these cells and break into, you know, some of these regions that I've marked off in yellow, but you'll never really know where kind of the real boundaries lie anytime you're dealing with data sparsity. So anyway, 599 is the like tentative, absolute maximum number I've gone with, but this is really just a starting point for me. I'm hoping to write something a little more comprehensive about what I think about these Sino-Japanese readings. Maybe find some more ambitious results if I keep looking. So, anyway, yeah, that's that. I guess I'll get into, um, you know, should I even do any sentences on live right now? Obviously, Sean is trying to play an online game with me right now, and I was hoping to work out soon too. So I may, for the first time, actually not do any of my sentences during my live stream today. But you can see, I'm keeping pace. I've done some of my reviews today. I'll get the rest done by midnight. It's not the most interesting part of the live stream to watch me sit there and do that. So I'll put Sean ahead of you, dear viewer, who probably doesn't wish to watch me do these reviews anyway. So I'll leave it there, but hopefully this little taste of this project is interesting to some people. And yeah, there you have it. Till next time.